Welcome to this lecture entitled Examples in the Classroom. So now that we've gone through phonetics and phonology, it's time to look at teaching vocabulary. So vocabulary can be difficult for learners because of pronunciation, spelling, length and complexity, grammar, meaning, range, which means how wide or narrow the range of use of the word is. If the use is narrow, it's harder, and if you can use the word in a wider range, it's supposedly easier for learners to remember words. There's also connotation, if there's a negative or a positive connotation to a word. And finally, there's idiomaticity, which means, is the word extremely idiomatic or is it more transparent? Is it easier for a learner to guess its meaning? So these different reasons can help you anticipate the types of mistakes your learners are likely to make. You can present vocabulary in chunks, so what we call lexical chunks, whether as collocations, as phrasal verbs, as idioms, sentence frames, discourse markers. You can present also new vocabulary verbally or in a situation, with pictures, with real things, with actions and gestures, with a definition, and sometimes translation. So illustrating the meaning and explaining the meaning of words can be done in different ways, as long as you involve the learners. It is also important to test vocabulary from time to time to measure word knowledge. Feedback and appraisal can also be achieved using the same criteria used to mark someone's speaking tasks in official EFL exams. So, for example, when someone goes to an IELTS exam, they have speaking tasks, and the examiner has a list of criteria used to gauge the learner's level of fluency. So we're looking at pronunciation, we're looking at accuracy versus fluency. Are they speaking fast, but are they speaking well? Are they speaking correctly? The use of grammar is also taken into account. The use of vocabulary. Discourse management also, which is the evidence that the learner can express ideas and opinions. And finally, interactive communication. Are they able to simply answer questions, or are they also able to use functional language and interact with the examiner? So this also goes back to lesson planning. When we went over lesson planning and basics of teaching, we saw that a lesson plan is composed of 3 Ps. So you have the introduction, the warmer, whether you decide to dedicate that to going over homework or just a warm-up exercise to get the class going. That's followed by 3 Ps. So the first one being presentation. So here you can present the new vocabulary through transcripts, by using recordings, by focusing on selected language features, by using live listening also, and gap-filling exercises, which are called close activities. So this is about presenting vocabulary, raising awareness, so through different activities, so that they can already start to conceptualize. Then you've got step 2, which is practice. This is when they start to formulate, when they start to appropriate the vocabulary through activities. So the second P, practice, you can have your learners practice the newly discovered vocabulary with drilling, with reading exercises, so they can read aloud, for example, to start linking that vocabulary to its correct pronunciation. You can get them to practice it in writing so that they can link it with spelling, but also linking it with a broader context. So looking at how that word is actually used in a sentence. And you can also assist their performance. So that's called scaffolding. So you would do an exercise with tasks that enable the learner to repeat. So while being guided, so through communicative tasks. And then we have the third P. We have the production phase, which is where the use of vocabulary is becoming more automatic. Learners are more independent, they start to articulate more and use that vocabulary with more confidence, more fluency, And this is the end of the lesson, so it's important to show the learners what they've learned. This is not when you incorporate new elements or new vocabulary. This is when you simply say, okay, we've done all this, we've learned all this vocabulary together, you know how to use it in context, you know how to pronounce it. Now here's an exercise where you are expected to use that vocabulary. So you can use old vocabulary and the new vocabulary. So that could be a guided conversation, it could be role play, a variety of speaking exercises. So how do I teach vocabulary other than by level? You can teach vocabulary in two ways. You can do it in a more explicit way, in a more active way, when you say, look, the focal point of this activity or this lesson is to assimilate this list of words. So that's one way of approaching it. And the second way is more incidental, more unconsciously. So in context, in other words. So whilst they're undertaking an activity such as a listening exercise or a reading exercise, they acquire the new vocabulary by highlighting those words together. So in context, very often it's argued that there's less pressure put on the students, so it's more effective. But both approaches are useful, so whether it's more active or more in context, more passive. So depending on your priority, so what do you want to achieve, I think it's important to do both. You can approach learning vocabulary actively, but also in context. So here's a little checklist that you should have on you when you start teaching, but also when you're doing your reflective diaries, when you're thinking about how to improve your teaching style. This is something you can also bring into a classroom when you're doing a peer observation yourself. So here's your checklist. So are the aims and the objectives of my class clearly outlined? Am I going to be able to promote and maintain my students' interest? Do I have questions and a framework to stimulate thought? Am I doing summarization? Am I doing recapitulation? Am I using a variety of teaching aids? How is my speech? Am I audible? And finally, is my approach enthusiastic? Am I conveying the right kind of energy? So this is linked to how we encourage students, how we can maintain their motivation, how we can encourage them to speak with more ease, more fluency. So this is a problem. This is something that you will always need to think about, because English is not phonetic. Words are not always pronounced as they are written. So getting each word's pronunciation right can sometimes be frustrating for learners. So you just have to incorporate that when teaching vocabulary at all times. So pronunciation and spelling. It's not say it as it is spelt, like that would be the motto when learning Spanish, say it as it is spelt. It's written that way, it's pronounced that way. So it's not like in English. So by level, when teaching vocabulary, we have to teach it by level in practice. So with beginner learners, you have to teach them the basic rules and practice them together. Beginners will tend to mimic you, so exaggerating the position of your tongue, teeth and mouth are key. After several attempts, you'll notice that learners should be able to repeat the sounds. Whereas with intermediate to advanced students, the rules are generally already known to them, so it's a matter of prompting them to the right pronunciation. Explaining the actual rules here can be beneficial, so getting the learners to not only repeat but take a more active role, so writing things down, is recommended. Retaining new words is supposedly easier if the pronunciation to the learner is clear. So why is learning vocabulary an objective for many learners? Why do they want more words? They want more words to be more confident, to be understood. They want to also have a good accent, and they want to have enough day-to-day vocabulary used by natives to express themselves. So you have to go back to learning types. We saw in previous lectures different learning styles, different ways of memorizing. Some people are more visual, so using posters, incorporating flashcards and repetition can be beneficial. So do go back to that lesson and think, okay, what is the most effective way of teaching vocabulary here. What is suitable for this particular learner or this group of learners? Students will also ask you how they can improve their vocabulary outside the classroom. So encouraging them to watch films or series with or without subtitles is something they might enjoy. They might enjoy listening to songs or the radio. Getting them to keep a list of vocabulary is quite effective, so writing down words that they hear a lot. Let's say they're watching a series and the series covers a variety of topics, but let's say that the main topics are relationships, politics and travel, let's say that. Well, it would be beneficial in this case to write down those key words by lexical field. So words related to politics, words related to relationships, words related to travel, so that as they watch the different episodes of that series, they feel that they are understanding more, not just because they're reading the subtitles. Some learners will enjoy reading also, and writing. Why not keep a diary in English? Not just take notes or create lists of words. Why not write a diary? And just say to them that mixing all four skills is always more beneficial. So trying to incorporate listening, speaking, reading and writing will make the vocabulary stick. Setting realistic goals is also very important. Lots of learners think, oh my God, I need to master 5,000 words in order to speak fluently. So giving them a focus, telling them, look, don't learn all the phrasal verbs in one go. It's impossible. There's over 10,000 of them in the dictionary. Learning words maybe with a synonym and an antonym each time, that's a good way to get started. So getting them to learn prefixes and suffixes is also a good way of helping them broaden their vocabulary, because if they can understand the meaning of that element at the beginning of a word, they can understand how that adjusts the meaning of the word. So this inflection, the prefix in this case, it could be un, it could be in, it could be dis. So this little element there can help them already learn more vocabulary, and then suffixes that will help them understand what a word is, whether it belongs to a word class or another. Is it an adjective? Is it more likely to be a verb? So suffixes are useful in that sense. So going back to how you will incorporate this in the classroom, so the techniques that we've covered. So some of the techniques you can use in the classroom, just to do a little recap here. You can keep a list of words. You can also drill, you can translate, you can use the occasional tongue twister if you want to introduce repetition, but in a more fun and engaging way. You can do scaffolding, you can do eliciting, and you can use etymology. If you want to start preparing your teacher's kit, so I've most surely talked about this before, but as a newbie to teaching, it's always nice to have lots of printouts that you have on you at all times, because although we talk about lesson planning and the PPP, the different sections, the different stages of a lesson, if it doesn't work out sometimes, it's nice to have a backup plan. So your printouts, these handouts that you can have, or just a memo so that you can then transcribe that onto a whiteboard, onto a classroom board. So you would have, for example, a list of commonly mispronounced words, a list of commonly misspelt words, your irregular verbs, words which are adopted, so words from a foreign language which we use in English. And then you can refer to that when you feel that it's relevant. If a mistake's come up and it's not on your lesson plan, then you can say, okay, we're having a 5-minute break, we're going to look at this together, and then you feel more at ease, more in control. Now, vocabulary is important, but it's difficult for learners to always know the exact word. So there are different communication strategies which they will use, and you can encourage them to use until they feel comfortable using more vocabulary. So with the lower levels, you will often see that they use an all-purpose word. So they'll say things like stuff, thing, make, do, rather than say the exact word. So that's quite common, an all-purpose word. You have also language switch. very often beginners will just use a word or an expression from their language. They'll just say okay, and then they just throw in the word from their language, hoping that it's transparent enough for you to understand. So that's quite common and quite cute at times. Then you have all the non-verbal communication, so what we call paralinguistics, where people use mime and gesture to try and convey the intended meaning. So that's something learners and teachers alike use a lot in the classroom. Another thing you'll notice amongst your learners is that they will ask for help, not explicitly, they won't say help me teacher, but what they'll do is they'll start a sentence and then they'll leave part of that sentence incomplete, and they go as, and then they expect you to complete that utterance. So there are lots of different communication strategies that learners use when they don't know the word. So here's a little list that you can refer to if you want to write that down. I don't want to saturate you with loads and loads of theory. I think that knowing that they have these strategies and that's how they survive with basic vocabulary is enough. And as you progress as a teacher, as you gain more and more experience in the classroom, you can refer to this list and say, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. I see what this learner is doing.